What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I haven't been on here in such a long time, and I figured that it was time for an update on my reading habits. I used to do the lit logs where I would film a segment every time that I finished a book, but now that I'm in college, it's not as realistic to try and do that anymore. And also, I just like ran out of phone storage because phones are weird. I delete the video off of my phone every time that I upload one, but somehow I don't have enough room to film another one. So whatever. So I figured that I could just update you guys in one video so far this year. So today's March 20th, 2026. Uh, and let's see, try to keep time. So I have read 40 things this year. Uh, and actually 41. I forgot to write down. I read Cats of Copenhagen by James Joyce. That's not on this list because I forgot to write it down. So I'll start with that, I guess. Um, that's a children's book, and I have no recollection of it at all. Um, it's about what it sounds like it's about. I think it's James Joyce's only children's book. It's pretty good. I recommend it. So I'm going to go through this list of 40 pieces, but I'm not going to elaborate on all of them because, like everyone that reads, I don't recollect everything. Um, and a great number of these are just individual poems because I do write down, like, unless I'm reading from a collection, like a book collection, I do write down the individual poems that I read if they're intentional. So I'll start at the very beginning of the year. I read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I got this book for Christmas and I read it immediately. It took me like 2 days to read. So I finished it. This was not a 2026 read, now that I think about it, but I'll count it anyway. Um, this is an Irish novella, um, published in 2021, and it is about a man he's a family man. It's a very normal Irish family. Um, and they live in a village that is very much run by the church. So, you know, the community is very church based. Almost everything in the town is connected to the church. Um, and about halfway through the book, the man who is the main character uh, realizes a wrongdoing of the church that nobody really knows about. And he has to grapple with the dilemma of, does he reveal to the rest of the village like what the church is doing, or does he keep it a secret because he wants to, watch his back? Uh, that's pretty much what the book is about, and it's a lot more interesting than I'm making it out to be. But it's a distant read. I read that uh like December into January. And then the second thing that I read, and this was also kind of like novella length, even though it is very much nonfiction. It's an academic piece. It's called Fatal Freedom: The Ethics and Politics of Suicide by Thomas Sass, and this is from 1999. Um, this is a very interesting read. Thomas Sass was I think he was a psychologist, but he had very unorthodox views about things like suicide, and I, I also do. I think that even though obviously suicide is very, 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 um, you know, disheartening and tragic when it happens, it is, people treat it like it's not an option. And that's kind of like a denial that our society is in. It's not a good option, but people treat it like, you know, I don't have to explain it. like online, society online, they treat it like you're crazy for bringing it up. And they treat people that consider it like they're criminals. And I don't agree with that. I think that is actually it's a valid thing to think about. He thinks that's funny. And Thomas Sass talks a lot about how institutions and society in general treats uh, people that are suicidal and kind of like diminishes them even more by like not validating what they talk about. Um, it's very hard to explain, and I agreed with a lot that he said, but he is an extremist. So not everything, definitely not everything. Um, but that article is a well, it's a whole book, but I'm talking about one article in particular. I think it's public domain. I think it's available on I don't know how you pronounce it. It's just store. It's like it's the public domain website. If you Google this, it'll come up and you'll be able to read it if you really want to. But I wouldn't recommend reading it if you're in a fragile state or anything. And then second up, or third, sorry, we have this is embarrassing. I read like the last 100 pages of Twilight by Stephanie Meyer that was published in 2005. So I can explain this, okay? You must be thinking, English major, what are you doing reading Twilight? So I actually started reading Twilight in summer of 2024. So it's been a while. Because almost everyone that I know read Twilight when we were like 12. But the thing is, I didn't like reading um, until I was about 15. So I really missed a lot of like trendy books when I was younger. And every once in a while, I'm having a conversation with friends and they make a reference to Twilight. And I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. So I figured, I'll knock out the first book. Like, what is there to lose? So I started Twilight uh, in summer of 2024, and it was all right. Like I got through it pretty quickly. But then summer ended. I had like 100 pages of the book left, but I didn't want to bring that to school. Like that's kind of like a book that you read in secret when you're 18. So I, I left it at home and eventually, I was just reading stuff for other classes. So I just put it down and I just kind of like forgot about it. And then I came back for winter break um this this past Christmas season and I saw it on my floor and I was like, I'm gonna finish it right now. And I just finished it all in one sitting. And it's pretty good. I'm not really gonna like waste breath explaining what Twilight is about. It's just a romantic teenage vampire story. It's very much. I know that if I would have like read that when I was 12, I would have loved it. It's pretty good for the age group. Just reading it now is a little too late. Okay, next up, I read A Satire Against Reason and Mankind by John Wilmot, aka the Earl of Rochester, from 1675. In this essay, or kind of like it's kind of like a prose essay, which is satirical. John Wilmot kind of just you know satirically criticizes society uh, in the world that he lives in, like nine. I mean, sorry, not 1675 Europe, basically. He kind of just um, satirizes like the way people act and treat each other and stuff like that. Um, I don't really remember the details, but was not bad. And after that, I read A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, and that's from 1729. This is a darker piece of satire, um, where Jonathan Swift, he was Irish, and uh, I think he was Irish, but he moved to England, or something like that. And the English and Irish, have always clashed, of course. So, um, he was on the Irish side, even though he was in England. And I think England was having like a hunger issue, not necessarily famine, but like a hunger issue. And he wrote this satire piece, to kind of address the hunger issue and the issue, um, of the mistreatment of the Irish in England and by English people in general. God, sorry. um, so he basically recommended that the English people would kill all of the Irish, like, babies and children and eat them and stuff like that, um, to solve the hunger strike, which is obviously satire. Um, and funny enough, so I've read this like 3 times at least. In my, I'm taking a satirical themes class, and I have to write my own rendition of the Modest Proposal, about a modern political issue. So I just finished my draft. It's probably the most it's probably the most disgusting thing I've ever written, if I'm being honest, and I will not elaborate. But it's definitely like a interesting place to put yourself because you're basically playing devil's advocate, but you are the devil. Um, and it's kind of crazy. Next up, I read Dreams by Langston Hughes. That was from 1922, and I don't remember that. Um, the next couple poems I had, like, shortly after I came back from winter break. I had this night here in college. I just like sat down and read poetry until like 3 a.m. And it's a blur, if I'm being honest. Like, I wrote down what I read, but it's a blur. So I don't remember a lot of these on a deep level. So I also read Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe from 1849, and I read I Have a Rendezvous with Death by Alan Seeger from 1916. While I don't remember the content of that poem, well, I mean, it's kind of self explanatory. He's talking about, how he feels that death is near. And one thing that's kind of sadly ironic about that poem is Alan Seeger actually died in action in war, like less than a year after this poem was written. Um, so that's kind of like a strange, memoriam to have for your life, that this is one of his last poems. I have a rendezvous with death. So that's interesting. And then after that, I read Dulce et Dictorum Est, um, by Wilfred Owen, and that is from 1917. That one, once again, I don't remember the content, but I did find it a little strange because it's from 1917. However, the author kind of tries to make it sound a lot older, in my opinion, and he kind of overdoes it, like he cheeses it up a little bit by accident. But I can do better, so whatever. It's okay. And then after that, I read The Naming of Cats by T.S. Eliot, and that's from the early 1930s. And I honestly can't remember. I feel like I read a children's book by T.S. Eliot, and maybe that was it, or maybe it's just a poem. I really have no idea. Like, I have no recollection of reading that, but I did. I have it written down here. And then after that, I have Lines Written in Early Spring by William Wordsworth from 1798. I don't really remember this, but William Wordsworth is like one of my favorite poets. I just like his flow. So I assume I liked that. And then after that, I read Mending Wall by Robert Frost, and that is from 1914. And then after that, I read Daddy by Sylvia Plath, and that's from 1962. And I know that that's a dark poem. Of course, it's Sylvia Plath, but I don't I don't really remember the content once again, unfortunately. And then after that, I read I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth, and that's from 1802. And I actually have the poem here on my phone. Um, a couple of these, if I really like them, then I'll read them to you. This one's relatively short. It's just four stanzas. So this is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be gay in such jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth this show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. So that's that one. I do really enjoy that poem. I believe that that poem was inspired by, it was something very simple. I think it was when William Wordsworth took a walk with his sister. That's what inspired him, and I just find that relatable. I tend to not write poetry based off of like tremendous events that happen to me. So I kind of found that nice that it's about such a mundane thing. So after that, I read On His Blindness by John Milton from 1653. Okay, listen, I know how like amazing John Milton's work is. However, I know I just haven't read the right things yet. But everything that I've read about John Milton so far is him complaining about being blind. Uh, so I just need to read something else, I think, because I just didn't really care. And that sounds so mean. But I just didn't care, you know, whatever. Like, I don't know. And then after that, I read The Ruined Maid by Thomas Hardy from 1866. I enjoyed this. I don't particularly remember it. I know this is a very productive video. I don't really remember a lot of these. These are all from the same night. And then I read Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and that's from 1838. I don't really remember that, but one funny detail, and I don't know why this happens, and I don't know why I've made this false connection, but I always mix up Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and William Wordsworth. Like, I thought they were the same person for a year, which is strange because they're very, very different, but it's whatever. Um, and then after that, I read Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, which is from 1609, and pretty good once again. And then after that, I read Howl by Allen Ginsberg, and this one I didn't really even fully understand it. I read it a couple times, but it was very, very, very interesting. Like I would read it many times more. Allen Ginsberg was a poet and author in the Beat Generation, and the Beat Generation is a era of writing that really, really intrigues me. Uh, Other people in the Beat Generation are like Jack Kerouac and Alan Watts, stuff like that. Um, it's a lot. It's a lot of like writing about traveling and stuff. It's just like very like mundane, rugged subject matter. And from what I've read from that era, I have liked it. So I, as far as I've read from Allen Ginsberg, I enjoy his writing, even though sometimes I fail to understand. And then after that, I read The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot from 1910, and I don't remember that at all. Are you surprised? Then after that, I went back to Allen Ginsberg and I read A Supermarket in California from 1955. And I think that's from the same collection as Howl. I really, really enjoyed that too. And then number 22 is Pilgrim by Alan Marshfield from 1958. And this was the final poem that I read in that night of poetry. And I don't remember it at all. Um, and then New Day, finally. I read After the Three Moon Era by Gary Fink. Now, I really, really liked this. This is available on the Kenyon Review website, and I believe it's free. They might make you like create an account or something, but it's free to read, and I made an account and they don't send you like emails or anything. So I recommend it. It's from 2019. This is a braided memoir piece, or yeah, memoir slash personal essay piece. It's creative nonfiction, and it's very, very good. I remember it for sure. It's very hard to explain what it's about. Um, it grapples with details about Gary Fink's father, about the moon. Uh, it's just like a plethora of information. How lots of braided memoirs are. Um, yeah, it's fairly long and it's kind of challenging to read, but it's one of those things where you'll feel very accomplished when you finish it. And even if it's kind of like it's difficult to get through, and I have to admit, about halfway through, I was like, "Ah, what if I just skip this?" Then, like, once you actually get into it and you start getting the flow, because it's one of those things, there's lots of line breaks and it kind of switches in between topics, but they're all connected if you really, really think about it. It's very hard to make the connection, and that's the point. Um, it's like a puzzle, and it's really good. And Gary Fink was actually the founder of the Writers Institute at the university I attend, and I had a chance to meet him after I read this, and I got my book signed by him. And oh, I forgot to write it down, but I also read his short story, The Nazi on the Phone, which is from his collection For Keepsies. It's his first collection of short stories, and it's about like these two guys that hear word that there's like a an office of Nazis in a in downtown where they live, and one of them is like really, really passionate about like going and causing trouble with those people, and the other one like kind of just tags along. But this other guy's like really obsessed about it, where it's to the point where like he's causing issues because it's kind of like a humorous piece because the other guy's like, there's only four of them, and we're in an area where they can't really do anything. And then the other guy's like, let's go light their office on fire. So, really extremist. It was kind of funny. Like, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a very short story. So, if I try to explain too much of it there's no point in reading it. So, go read that. Um, and then after that, I read A Letter Concerning Enthusiasm to My Lord by Anthony Ashley Cooper, aka Shaftesbury. This piece was the bane of my existence. I hated it. I hated it so much. This was one of my readings for my satirical class. Ugh, yuck. I've read it for the first time. So it's only like 28 pages, I think. And I read it the first time when it was just like a standard reading. It took me like 20 minutes and I was like, "Ugh, whatever." I didn't really understand it, but I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then we didn't talk about it in class for like 2 weeks. And then my teacher was like, by the way, guys, that reading, remember that reading, Letter Concerning Enthusiasm? We're going to have a quiz on that 2 classes from now. Then, you know, I was like, oh no. So I started reading it deeply again and realized that I had no idea what it was talking about. This is from 1707. It's an essay. And the essay is basically talking about like how far is too far with satire and why satire is more effective than persecuting people and like the connection between Christianity and uh, Christianity and censorship, and how censorship connects to satire, and how satire connects to Christianity. And that sounds simple, but it's from 1707, and there were like pop culture references left and right from 1707 where I was reading it, and I just had no idea what it was about. So I sat at this very desk for 17 hours and I highlighted every other line of this paper, and then I wrote in the margins and translated it into modern English, and then I brought it to my professor during office hours, and I was like, "Help me!" And so he helps me like decipher the lines where I was just completely lost. And then I took the test, and it was so easy. And I was kind of mad. It was like the kind of test where, you know, a lot of people would say, "Oh, it was easy because you tried so hard and you studied." No, it was so easy. Like I lost years of my life, and it was so easy. Like I didn't even have to do all that. But at least now I have a very adequate understanding of that. Not still not my favorite um thing. I think I actually have it right here. Want to come out? This is so you can see what, yeah, you can see it, but it's like this is what it's not really focusing. That's what all of it looks like. So it's all like, yeah. So see every line is highlighted. The ones that were left in white were the ones that I didn't that weren't very clear to me. So that that's been my least favorite reading of the year, but still a rewarding one. And then right after that, I read The Beggar's Opera by John Gay, and that is from 1728, and that is a play, and it's basically about it's kind of like a romantic comedy. That's how I'd put it. It's also satire. But one thing that I failed to understand about that, I could tell that it was satire, I just couldn't tell about what. So what the satire was aimed towards. I think maybe it was around like parental authority and morals and stuff like that, and like free will and romance as a whole. Maybe that was something. I'm not really sure, if I'm being honest with you. But it was an entertaining story. I actually really liked it. It was like, if I were to make a top 5 reads list of the year so far, I did. It would be a honorable mention. I really liked it. It's about this girl who falls in love with this guy. It's a very basic story, honestly. It's about this girl who falls in love with this guy, but her parents forbid it. And then the guy shows his true colors at the end, and so does she. So, very generic description, but it is true. And then right after that, I read Candide by Voltaire, and I really, 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 really loved this. Uh, It's also satire, and it's about this guy named Candide, and you know, he has a crush on. It's even more complicated to say from memory. He has a crush on this girl, and she is like very wealthy. He's like normal ish, and I think she gets like kidnapped or something, and he goes on this quest to find her, because he wants to marry her. And along the way, he finds a bunch of like philosophers with different philosophies that influence him. And then I don't want to tell you guys what happens, but everything comes to a point. And then after that, I read When I Consider How My Light Is Spent by John Milton, from approximately 1653. Um, and I have to admit, when I looked this up, it said that it was also called On His Blindness. So I might have read that twice because I mentioned that earlier. But yeah, still about him being blind. Uh, he's really milking it. And then after that, I read Nurse's Song by William Blake from 1789. And I really, really like William Blake. I have to admit, even though it's quote unquote overused, I am a big sucker for rhyming poetry when it's done well. And I think William Blake is a great example of when rhyming poetry is done well. I just think that's a fact. And then after that, I read some of, not all of it, just a little bit of Memory by Bernadette Mayer. This is very, very difficult to decipher prose poetry, and it's very incoherent. It was sent to me by someone that, you know, I admire, so I figured that I'd give it a shot. I read like the first chapter, and it's it's extremely incoherent at first glance. You kind of have to decipher it very, very effortfully. And I think it's about, I don't know. I don't know. But I liked it. I liked it. I don't know how to explain it in an adequate way to help you guys understand it. But once again, that is available online. So you could try. You could try it. I'd recommend reading it in different ways. Read it backwards, read every other line, read it normally all the way through, stuff like that. And then after that, I read Late Fame by Arthur Schnitzler, and that is from 1894. However, it wasn't published until 2016. I absolutely adored this book. This is a full length novel, or it's like a novella, if I'm being honest. It's like 100 pages, but I really, really liked it. It's about this old man who works in a corporate building. However, in his younger years, he was a poet, but he left that life behind him. And then a young man comes to his door and says that he's a fan of a poetry collection that he published when he was young that he hadn't even thought of. He hasn't written poetry like in many decades. And he gets invited into this young group of poets, and he kind of his love for poetry is reignited, and he has to reevaluate his life and even do a reading. I absolutely loved I absolutely loved it. Like so much. And I recommend it fully. I think it's an NYRB classic. It must I think it's like $10. It's very short, and I recommend it fully. It's amazing. And then after that, I read The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe, and that is from the early 1590s. And I absolutely love that poem. So I'm going to read it to you. So this is Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods, or steepy mountains yield. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing mardigras. And I will make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. If these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. So I absolutely loved that. Um, and yeah, that's a special poem to me. It's one of those poems that has like a sentimental value for really no particular reason. Just anytime that you're reminded of it, it's a poem that makes me feel refreshed. It makes me want to read poetry. And I feel like it's a very genuine love poem, and I really adore it. And then after that, I read On a Fly Drinking Out of His Cup by William Oldys from 1732. This this poem was okay. It's literally just like a two stanza poem about a fly drinking out of this guy's cup, and he tries to get like philosophical about it, but it's very basic. He's just like he's drinking water to sustain himself because we're all gonna die. And I don't know. It's from 1732, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe he thought that was like really groundbreaking, but I don't know. I was indifferent about it. It was a little funny, but I think that he was trying to be serious, so I'm not sure. And then after that, I read the Ode on the Death of a Favorite Cat Drowned in a Tub of Goldfishes by Thomas Gray, 1747. This was a pretty good poem, but I really hope that it's not about his actual cat, because that's really sad, and like it's something that people could find funny, but I can just imagine. I don't know. I have a soft spot, a sad soft spot for when people's cats and like dogs die. Like it makes me feel so bad. So I really hope that that didn't actually happen. That his cat didn't drown in a tub of goldfish, because that's bad. Um, and then after that, I read Night by William Blake. That is from 1789, and I absolutely loved that. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna read it to you. Yes, I am. Basically, okay. This one's a little longer, but we can do it. This is Night by William Blake. The sun descending in the west, the evening star does shine. The birds are silent in their nest, and I must seek for mine. The moon, like a flower in heaven's high bower, with silent delight, sits and smiles on the night. Farewell, green fields and happy grove, where flocks have took delight, where lambs have nibbled, silent move, the feet of angels bright. Unseen they pour blessing and joy without ceasing on each bud and blossom and each sleeping bosom. They look in every thoughtless nest where birds are covered warm. They visit caves of every beast to keep them all from harm. If they see any weeping that should have been sleeping, they pour sleep in on their head and sit down by their bed. When wolves and tigers howl for prey, they pitying stand and weep, seeking to drive their thirst away and keep them from the sheep. But if they rush dreadful, the angels most heedful receive each mild spirit, new worlds to inherit. And there the lion's ruddy eyes shall flow with tears of gold, and pitying the tender cries, and walking round the fold, saying wrath by his meekness, and by his health sickness are driven away from our immortal day. And now beside thee, bleeding lamb, I can lie down and sleep, or think of him, or think on him who bore thy name, graze after thee and weep. For washed in life's river, my bright mane forever shall shine like the gold as I guard over the fold. So I love that poem so much. I love William Blake a lot. That's probably my favorite poem that I've read all year, if I'm being completely honest. It's just so beautiful, and I love like I don't know how to explain it in like a way that sounds normal. I love poems that feel like almost like a lullaby or a bedtime story, but they're for smart people. That's a terrible way to explain it. Like Ugh, like that's something that if I had like if I was reading a bedtime story to a baby and they had like the vocabulary of a university English student, I would read that to send someone to bed. It's just like a beautiful, comforting poem, and I absolutely love it. And then after that, I read A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt, and this is a full work. This is a play from 1954, and it's about a priest who refuses to I forget which priest I forget I forget which king it is. The priest basically refuses to bless or, like validate the king's divorce, and he stands his ground so bad or so well that he gets in a lot of trouble for that. But he chooses faith above all things, and it gives him a bad outcome in the world. Um, that's all I'll say about that. But I really enjoyed that. I read that in like 3 days. That was during my midterm break for the spring semester, so I really enjoyed that. And then after that, I read She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron from 1814, and I really, really enjoyed that. It's a short rhyming poem as well. Lord Byron is one of, if not my favorite poet, not my favorite author, my favorite poet. Um, and his poems are always a fun time for me, at least the shorter ones. I haven't read like Don Juan or anything. And then after that, I read Darling Daughter of Babylon by Vachel Lindsay, and that's from approximately 1914. And then after that, I read The Moon is a Painter, also by Vachel Lindsay, and that is the last one that I will read aloud. I'm trying to only choose ones that are kind of short because I'm not really that good of a reader, so at least out loud. I can read though, trust me. Okay, this is The Moon is a Painter by Vachel Lindsay. He coveted her portrait, he toiled as she grew gay. She loved to see him labor in that devoted way, and in the end it pleased her, but bowed him more with care. Her rose smile showed so plainly, her soul smile was not there. That night he groped without a lamp to find a cloak, a book, and on the vexing portrait by moonrise chanced to look. The color scheme was out of key, the maiden rose smile faint, but through the blessed darkness she gleams, his friendly saint, the comrade, white, immortal, his bride, and more than bride, the citizen, the sage of mind, and for whom he lived and died. So I really enjoyed that poem. It's kind of just, themes of devotion. It's a pretty basic poem, but I think it's pretty. As I said before, I have a sweet spot for rhyming poetry. And then after that, I read Dope by Amiri Baraka. And this does not have a set date of composition, but I know it's before 1975. And I absolutely love this. This was like very, very, very powerful. Um, a lot. So I should say I listened to this poem. It's a poem that is 10 times more impactful if you listen to it. Um, and I must have listened to it about 20 times, if I'm being honest with you. I always come back to it. It's about, it's kind of making fun of like very obnoxious um, preachers that think that like anything that goes bad in the world is the devil, and everything that goes well in the world is God, and how like churches excuse some political moves that aren't godly and things like that. And just Amiri Baraka's performance of the poem was completely unforgettable, and I've come back to it many times. It's really great. And the last thing that I read this year, which I finished literally like a couple hours ago, is the Epic of Gilgamesh. by Anonymous. It's approximated that this was written in 2100 BCE, but nobody's exactly sure. If you don't know about Gilgamesh, it was discovered on tablets. I think they were stone tablets, relatively recently, I think. So, yeah, um, it's a pretty basic tale. I recommend reading it. It's very short. Okay, but anyway, that's what I read. And then I did have a top five so far. I think everything's reversed, so I'll just have to read this to you. Number one is Late Fame. Number two is Dope. Number three is A Man for All Seasons. Then we have Small Things Like These, which was from the very beginning. And then we have Candide. So those were the things that I liked the most so far. And then second half, I mean, hopefully not second half, because we don't want this to be that long, but I wanted to show you guys the books that I have bought or received during this year so far. And it's a lot, I'm not gonna lie. But just a disclaimer, I don't really have any other hobbies. It's kind of just me and my books, so it's not like I have to split my income, which is $0 between Xbox and books. It's just this, so that's why I obtain them so much. And also, I thrift all of them, so that's kind of my excuse right now. So none of these are above like $10. A lot of them are above below $2. So let's get started anyway. Okay. So first up, and these are not chronological. I don't remember when I bought these. Okay. So this one is the lighting is so bad. Maybe if I darken it. Okay. This is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This is kind of like a memoir in prose. So I'm really looking forward to this. Someone recommended this to me in summer of 2023, and I couldn't find it at a thrift store until I bought this a couple weeks ago. So very much looking forward to reading this because it's very overdue that I even bought it. So yeah. And then the same day, I bought The Garden Party by Catherine Mansfield. This is a collection of stories. Apparently, there's 15 stories in here, so they must be like super short because it's really not that thick. But I'm excited to read it because I've never heard of it. However, I do have to admit, I I am one of those people. I'd love to obtain as many Penguin classics as I can. This is a Penguin modern classic, and I'd never heard of it, and it really enticed me. I like the art on it, and I know I'll read it eventually because I'm very big on short stories, and that's exactly what that is. And then this is not as exciting, but I got a little Oxford dictionary, which is a dictionary, because my satirical themes teacher prefers. It's a tech free class, and he wants us to have a dictionary, but I didn't have one that would fit in my bag, so that's what that is for. And then I I got Gulliver. I don't even know how you pronounce this. Gulliver's Travels, by Jonathan Swift because he wrote the Modest Proposal, which I read, and I was fond of it. So I figured that I think this is like really his only other major work, and it was recommended to me, so I figured that I'd try it out at least. Um, and then I have Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. Um, this is philosophical, and I am very much looking forward to it. Um, I've heard really good things about it, and I'm not sure how accessible it is, but I'm going to make it accessible. That's my best advice for myself. something is only accessible if you don't let yourself access it. And then I have The Transit of Venus by Shirley Hazard. And although this is a Penguin classic, I haven't been able to find much about it online. So I'm very intrigued about this because I feel like I don't know, like I looked it up on Goodreads and it's like it doesn't exist, but it's a Penguin classic, so it has to. So I'm really really intrigued about this because I'd really never heard of it before, but I watched a short film from like it must have been the 1800s or like the early 1900s that was called The Transit of Venus. So I figure there might be a connection, but I'm not exactly sure. And then after that, I have Selected Poems by D.H. Lawrence. This is uh it looks like prose poetry or free verse, kind of a mix of them. Mostly free verse. Um Actually, it seems like there's all types of things. There's quatrains in here that are rhyming, ABAB, stuff like that. There's multiple collections in here. That's why. So I think it switches up. But I'm highly interested in this. This was a inexpensive thrift find. Um, so yeah. Oh, that's weird. I just looked at the back. It used to be a library book, and it's from my hometown. Although I thrifted it in my college town. I was just meant to have it. I guess that's really cool. Okay. And then next up, I got the Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters. This is prose, mostly. Yeah, like prose and free verse. I gotta be honest, sometimes I have trouble differentiating the uh free verse and prose. I think it's mostly up to the author at that point to differentiate that. But yeah, I don't really know anything about this, but I want to get into prose more because, as I said before, I'm very fond of rhyming poetry, and I find that I read a lot of rhyming poetry, and then I kind of neglect other poetry. And then after that, I bought the poems of John Keats because this is it's John Keats. He's great. That's just an objective fact. So I'm glad. I'm pretty sure this is like a yeah, I think it's a full collection. Yeah. Um, and I always like seeing like things that are written. You can't see that. Things that are written inside of thrifted books. So this originated from a university bookstore in Seattle, Washington, and it found its way to me. If you don't know, I go to school in uh, Pennsylvania, so it really traveled far to me. It's a very worn out book. It's pretty floppy, but I like that. It's been loved. Okay, and then I have the Best American Short Stories from 2007. I have not cracked this open yet, but I'm very much looking forward to this um, because hopefully, I will be taking an intermediate fiction class next academic year. So, yeah. All right, I'm taking the clock away. We're halfway through. Um, this is Wyland Memoirs of Carwin the Billiquist by Charles Brockton Brown. Uh, I really don't know what this is about either, but it was very inexpensive, and I'm impulsive, so uh, I'm also really intrigued about this. Most of this is Wyland. This is Wyland, and this is the second thing. So yeah, not sure what that's about, but I'm very much intrigued. I would love like to have enough time in my life to read all of the classics, no matter what they are. And then I got this Some of these I got for Christmas, so they're not necessarily this year, but I didn't show you guys them yet, so I'm just I'm cheating. This is Cassandra at the Wedding by Dorothy Baker. I got this for Christmas as well, and I just realized I could have been reading the synopsis for the ones that I don't know. Okay, I'll read the synopsis for this one. For Wyland. Wyland, Brown's novel of Authority Misrepresented and Authority Imagined, is a terrifying account of the fall oh my god, I can't say that word. Fallibility of the human mind and, by extension, of democracy itself. Set in rural Pennsylvania in the years before the American Revolution, the book relates how a small community is disturbed by intrusion of the mysterious Carwin, whose extraordinary verbal gifts cast doubt and dissension among them. So that seems interesting. Yep. And then Cassandra at the Wedding. This is one of my favorite authors. I mean, publisher. It's my favorite, one of my favorite publishers. My two favorite publishers are NYRB Classics, which is what this is, and Penguin Classics, which is what a lot of the other stuff has been. Um, so this is Cassandra Edwards is a graduate student at Berkeley. Gay, brilliant, nerve-wracked, miserable. At the beginning of this novel, she drives back to her family ranch in the foothills of the Sierras to attend the wedding of her identical twin, Judith, to a nice young doctor from Connecticut. Cassandra, however, is hell-bent on sabotaging the wedding. Um, so this seems like it'll be funny or it'll be really serious. I'm not exactly sure, but honestly, with NYRB classic books, I half the time I don't really have to read the synopsis. I've read a couple books from them, and I've been very, very satisfied every single time, and I never knew much of anything about the book beforehand. So I just kind of trust the publisher in a way. Okay, and then I have The Singularity by Dino Buzzati, which is also an NYRB classic, and this one is very short. Um, this is this says Hermano Ismani, an unassuming university professor, is summoned by the Ministry of Defense to accept a 2-year top secret mission at a mysterious research center, isolated from the world among forests, plunging cliffs, and high mountains. What's he supposed to do there? Not clear. How long will he be there? No saying. Still, Ismani takes the job, and accompanied by his no nonsense wife, Elisa, heads to the so-called experimental camp of Military Zone 36. It is some sort of nuclear project, he wonders. No, the colleagues tell him that's not what it is, but what they are working on is much, much more powerful. At the center of the research complex is a strange, shining white ball. Behind it, a deep gorge drops away, full of wires, radio towers, mobile sensors, and eccentric structures. A question begins to dawn. Could this be the shape of consciousness itself? So this seems like it'll really rack my brain. It seems really interesting. And I'm excited to read that. It shouldn't take long. That's also one that I got for Christmas. And then this one, uh, called The Silent Sherry by Antonio Di Benedetto. I believe this is translated. I'm not sure. Translated from Spanish. And also this one was originally in Italian, I believe. This one. And then Cassandra at the Wedding. It was originally in English. Yes. No translation there. NYRB does a great job of bringing international literature to life. And they also make a point to publish lost stories that deserve to be classics. Okay, so the synopsis of this is takes place in a nameless Latin American city during the early 1950s. A young man employed in middle management entertains an ambition to write a book of some sort, but first he must establish the necessary precondition, which the crowded and noisily industrialized city always denies him. However, often he and his mother and wife move in search of it. He thinks of embarking on his writing career with something simple, a detective novel, and pursues the possibility of choosing a victim among the people he knows and planning a crime as if he himself were the killer. That way, he hopes, his book might actually begin to take shape. So, this one, it seems like it's gonna evolve into a lot more than the synopsis says. And I'm excited to read this. It seems like it's gonna be an almost an action-packed read, which I'm excited for because I don't read that kind of stuff often. And then I got my hands on two Albert Camus pieces. One of them is Myth of Sisyphus, which I've read like half of it before, and I enjoyed that. And then I have The Rebel, um, which I have not read yet. And then a lot of the stuff that's coming up is philosophy, because I'm hoping to get into philosophy sometime soon. So I have Poetics by Aristotle, very short. I have Ethics by Aristotle. I have The Analects by Confucius. I have The Constellation of Philosophy by Boethius. I can't pronounce that. Just ignore that I even said that. I have Ecce Homo by Friedrich Nietzsche. I have The Last Days of Socrates by Plato. I have The Symposium, same guy. And that's the end of philosophy. And then we have the final four, which they're kind of like out of place, but they're the ones that I want to read um, soon. So that's why I guess they're at last. Um, I have The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and I'll read the synopsis for you. One Victorian scientist propels himself into the year 1800 and 2701 AD. He is initially delighted to find that suffering has been replaced by beauty, contentment, and peace. Entranced at first by the Eloi, an elfin species descended from man, he soon realizes that this beautiful people are simply remnants of a once great culture, now weak and childishly afraid of the dark. They have every reason to be afraid. In deep tunnels beneath their paradise lurks another race descended from humanity, the sinister Morlocks. And when the scientist's time machine vanishes, it becomes clear he must search these tunnels if he is ever to return to his own era. So I'm really, really interested in reading this. This is why it's in my express pile. That's what I like to call it. I'd like to read this as soon as possible. It's very short. I try to read like short books during the school year because trying to commit to reading anything above like 200 pages when you're taking college courses is like laughable, at least for me. Maybe other people don't have that problem. And then this one is The World Doesn't End by Charles Simic. This is a prose poetry collection, and Charles Simic is an author that I very much enjoy. I actually did an explication on one of his poems for my AP literature class in high school, and that's how I got introduced to Charles Simic. It was his poem A Partial Explanation, which was a free verse poem. However, these are prose, as you can see, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this, and I am planning on lending it to somebody once I'm done, so I have kind of an incentive to get it done so I can get to lending it to someone. Um, and I'm looking forward to reading that. It was the winner of the 1990 Pulitzer Prize as well, so can't be bad. And then I have Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. This is a modern book, which is rare for me. Um, Not to sound pretentious, I just don't really, I just don't really know that much about like brand new books until they're at least 10 years old. A lot of stuff that I read is just naturally older. But I'm excited to read this because I really can't recall the last time that I've read like a book that was published in the last 10 years, and I think this one has been published in the last 10 years. It's from 2017, so I have one more year until it's 10 years old. And and I'm really looking forward to reading this. I picked this up in Brooklyn. Uh, I love New York. I actually, confession, I bought this in September, um, but I haven't made a video in such a long time. So this one is the oldest buy out of all of these, but I really want to read this. Let me see if there's a synopsis. Okay, yes. Um, his wife, oh, working at the local processing plant, Marcos is in the business of slaughtering humans, though no one calls him that anymore. When his wife has left him, his father is sinking into dementia, and Marcos tries not to think too hard about how he makes a living. After all, it happened so quickly. First, it was reported that an infectious virus has made all animal meat poisonous to humans. Then governments initiated the transition. Now eating human meat, special meat, is legal. Marcos tries to stick to numbers, consignments, processing. Then one day he's given a gift, a live specimen of the finest quality. Though he's aware that any form of personal contact is forbidden, on pain of death, little by little he starts to treat her like a human being, and soon he becomes tortured by what has been lost, and what might still be saved. So I'm really looking forward to this. It seems like just just the right amount of stressful. Um, yeah, it seems like one of those like really high intensity books, and I need something like that. I've been reading a lot of stuff from like pre 1800, and I love that stuff too, but it's very much like people thought that like a firework was scary in the 1700s. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Also, excuse the fact that I'm keep messing up while I'm reading. It is a little, it's a tad bit late right now. I've had a long day, because today is a school day. So, yeah. Okay, finally, the last book to close out this video is The True Deceiver by Tove Jackson. This was originally in Swedish, and I've never read a Swedish book before. This is also an NYRB classic, and it was the winner of the 2011 Best Translated Book Award. Um, Here is the description of that. Deception, the lies we tell ourselves and the lies we tell others, is the subject of this, Tove Jackson's most unnerving and unpredictable novel. Here, Jansen. Oh, it's not Jackson, it's Jansen, sorry. Jansen takes a darker look at the subjects that animate the best of her work, from her sensitive tale of island life, The Summer Book, to her famous Moomin stories, Solitude and Community, Art and Life, Love and Hate. Snow has been falling on the village all winter long. It covers windows and piles up in front of doors. The sun rises late and sets early, and even during the day there is little to do but trade tales. This year everybody's talking about how Katri Kling and Anna Melon. Katri is a yellow-eyed outcast who lives with her simple-minded brother and a dog she refuses to name. She has no use for the white lies that smooth social intercourse, and she can see straight to the core of any problem. Anna, an elderly children's book illustrator, appears to be Katri's opposite, a God, a respected member of the village, if an aloof if an aloof one. Anna lives in a large empty house, venturing out in the spring to paint exquisitely detailed forest scenes. But Anna has something Katri wants, and to get it, Katri will take control of Anna's life and livelihood. By the time spring arrives, the two women are caught in a conflict of ideals that threatens to strip them of their most cherished illusions. So this seems extremely interesting, and I'm totally biased because, as I said before, like I want to read every NYRB classic because they've never disappointed me. But yes, that's what that's what I got going on. Uh, that's where I've been in the books. Let me see, will this fall over? Nope. That's good luck. Okay, so I will check back in. I'm not sure when, but if you're ever wondering what I'm doing, drop a comment on this video if there's not another video already, and I'll tell you what I'm currently reading. What about that? We'll make that deal. You can also follow my... Actually, no. I'm not dropping the gram right now. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. This was an extremely long video, so if you watch the whole thing, much love. And I hope that if you're in college, your semester's going okay. I know March is an evil season. Okay. See you guys, and see you in the next video. Thank you for tuning in.